Sierra is Andy's youngest daughter, and she's been playing games almost all of her life. For Andy, gaming has been a huge part of his life, and he loves to share that joy with his daughter Sierra. So come join us at the game table as we sit down with Sierra and talk about board games.
Meeple Nation, Sit Down with Sierra, bonus episode 1.
So Sierra is my youngest daughter. Today we get the opportunity to sit down with her, and we are going to discuss how the board gaming hobby has affected our lives. And I think this is going to be interesting because we are going to get a take on different generations. You know, Nathan, you and I are kind of first generation gamers. Gaming really wasn't a thing when we were kids so much. It was just the base regular board games that, you know, the family Mattel, Hasbro games that were out there. Parker Brothers, right? So it'll be interesting to talk with Sierra about this, having her being more of a second generation gamer and having grown up with a lot of games in the house.
Yeah, a lot more variety than we had as kids.
For sure. So I'm excited for this discussion and to kind of see where you came from, because you have a few more years on me, not a lot. Both of us have a lot more years on Sierra, so it's going to be interesting to see where this discussion goes and what her take is versus how our lives have been affected by gaming. Sierra, you have grown up in a house of gaming. What's the first thing when I told you that this is what we're going to be talking about? What's the first thing that kind of came to your mind?
Well, for me, it was like the evolution of games in our house. When I was really, really little in elementary school, we had this closet that had just a few games in it, maybe like 20 or 30. I would look up and see these, and had just barely learned how to read and was reading the titles of these games, and I was like, well, what in the heck are these? I don't understand. Then he started teaching us games like DC Deck Builder and stuff like that, and it's grown into this giant thing, and now, hey, look at where we are. We're recording a podcast for a board game podcast. It's great, and I think that's super cool and not something very many kids my age get to say they grew up with, but I think it's really cool.
So when do you think the first time you played DC Deck Builder was? How old were you?
Man, I have no idea. I was in early elementary school-ish. I would guess maybe third-ish grade.
Yeah, that's probably fully accurate. Basically, as soon as my kids could read, they were playing real games. They graduated from the Candyland type games to something actually fun. And DC Deck Builder was one of those games that I started them out on, and it was one that they grasped fairly quickly. Because of the simplicity of the game, yet it was fun enough that they kept coming back to it. We want to play this. We want to play again. We want to play again. To this date, they still have fun with that game.
Yeah, I played with them not too long ago and got my socks removed. They beat the socks right off of me.
We've played it a lot.
Yeah, it was very obvious. It was almost like my experience with 5 Minute Marvel, where you and Amara invited me to play. You just started. You said, okay, go. And I had no idea what was going on. So I'm like, okay.
I guess I'm figuring out in 5 minutes.
That's all the time you got.
Yep. As I used to tell my daughters, when I was a little girl, I look back at the games that I played with my parents. And one of the fondest memories I have is playing games with my dad. It was a memory game, shapes and colors that were hidden underneath these tokens. These kind of, they're almost like poker chip tokens. Underneath the board was kind of a Lazy Susan type turntable where you could slide and you just have to line up the arrows and it would change the pattern that is underneath the chips. A classic game called Husker Du. Back when I was a little girl, this was the game that we played the most with my parents and mostly with my dad. I actually don't recall ever playing a game with my mom until she was well into her seasoned years. That's quite entertaining, actually, to watch her play a game. There was games like Payday, playing some of those games with my brother. One that I actually picked up at a swap meet not too long ago called Bermuda Triangle, where there was a path that you follow your ships around. The ships have a little magnet on the top of it, and then you have this storm that rotates throughout the board, and under this storm are a couple of magnets. So if your boat goes into the storm, there's a chance your boat might not come out of the storm. And for me, that idea, that novelty of that just blew my mind. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world, to play this Bermuda Triangle game.
I have never heard of that. That actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it's around here somewhere. I can't remember where it got moved to. Oh, I think it's on that shelf over there.
I can see how a kid would think that was the most awesome thing in the world.
Yeah, and it was great. And then when I got a little bit older, my older brother got into Dungeons and Dragons back when it was a weird thing. And I wanted to play with him so bad. I wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I finally convinced him to let me make a character. And we were playing, and within 5 minutes, my guy was dead. And
So
I-
mean.
I cried. And he said, well, since you're crying, you can't ever play with us again. So I never got to play Dungeons and Dragons with my brother ever again.
And he's like, mission accomplished.
He was, I'm sure, exactly. I mean, because that, you don't, but it's your little brother that's going to cry all the time. And he wouldn't even let me put a Band-Aid on my decapitated guy. He's just going to put a Band-Aid on it. No, he's decapitated. Yeah, a really big Band-Aid. No.
No dice.
Nope, no dice. That was kind of my introduction as a little kid going into the hobby. But it's kind of funny, that same brother, he and I, we have a ton of memories of playing Star Wars customizable card game together. That experience with that game is kind of what led me into our current group. That our current group is not even the current group that it started with. And those games have changed. That game collection has expanded. Kind of like you, Sierra, looking up into those closets, that small amount of games. And now, what's it like to go into your basement now?
Oh, it is the most epic thing, and I love bringing new people over and just the shock that they have walking in and just board games on all 4 walls, and they're stacked up as high as they can go at the moment, and it is amazing having all, 800 now games down there?
Yeah, we're probably sitting close to 850.
Holy cow, that's more than last time I knew of. But I think it's absolutely amazing. There's so much variety, and it makes game nights so fun.
One thing that I've enjoyed watching, bringing friends over and dates over, there has almost always been a board game involved, even if it wasn't over at our house, which that was one of the things I wanted to have, was a place for my kids to go and hang out with their friends, and which it has become that. They'll come down and they'll play games, they'll watch movies. Gaming has been a big part of her dating life as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't think there is a single date that I have helped plan where board games haven't been included. I've done something of some sort with the board game, having one on me that I just pull out at the dinner table or bringing people over to the house. And it's awesome and brings everyone closer together, and it's so much fun.
See, that's a sign of a true gamer. We were just eating dinner and all of a sudden, out comes a board game. It's like, where'd that come from? Oh, I always have one on me.
Yeah, I used to say that there's always a chance that I have a game on or very near my person at all times.
Pretty much. That's why some come in small boxes. Very
Exactly.
easy to carry.
My first experiences, it was probably with my dad. My dad is not a gamer. He doesn't play games. In fact, he plays fewer games now than he did when we were kids. But there was one game that we could always get him to play, and which is kind of surprising when I think about it, because it was a fairly long game, and that's the farming game. I grew up on a dairy farm. For him, it was a bit of an obsession. It still kind of is, farming and ranching. Throw that same theme in a game, and he was all in. And he'd always beat us, and we didn't care because it was one of the few times we could actually get him around the table with us to play a game. But I love playing games. We would play Risk. We would play all the regular games. I think gaming really started affecting my life in a different way than how it probably affects most people when I started playing different games from the standard fare.
Ventured away from the Parker Brothers.
Correct. That's when game night started, right? When we started collecting those games. And honestly, I think about the kind of unique relationship I have with each of my kids, and a lot of that I attribute to the fact that we play games. We play games together. We play a lot of games together. My oldest daughter in particular, but all of my kids, and the skills they've gained from playing games, the critical thinking skills and the ability to plan ahead and the ability to adjust a plan on the fly because something happened that was outside of their control. Those are skills that you can apply in life. You're going to be way far ahead than a lot of other people that have not learned those skills as young kids. And with my daughter my oldest daughter who has a learning disability, to see how she's grown with just playing board games and being able to see cause and effect and consequences for and trying to plan out things has been huge for her. I see the growth that started when we first started playing games versus where she is now, and it's astronomical, the growth that she's had. And I attribute the vast majority of that to the fact that she loves board games.
Definitely have seen that with Amara from when we originally started playing with where she is at currently. But I want to ask you, Sierra, from your personal perspective, do you feel that you have, I'm gonna use my air quotes here, have you gained usable skills by playing board games?
Oh, 100%. I wrote down some of these too before this, and they matched up a lot with that. But in addition to that, I mean, we learned how to lose and not be sore losers, have fun even though we don't always win, and to work hard because winning doesn't just come to you. It's not given to you. You have to work for it. Something else that I kind of learned was money management, because games are not always cheap and they're really fun, and I always want to buy more, but I don't always have the money. So that money management is another thing that I wouldn't have thought I'd learned, but here we are.
That's probably a skill I should learn at some point.
That would be a good idea. Huh?
You and me both, actually.
Yeah, I don't have near the problem you have, but yes, we do. We both have an acquisition problem. There's no doubt about that.
You nail it with the ability to lose, right? And to be able to lose well. I think that's something sometimes as parents we struggle with. We wanting our kids to always succeed. We want our kids to be able to be the best they can be. Sometimes in our best efforts, we do the exact opposite. I talk about my kids. They would play games with their grandma, and both my daughters would play games with their grandma, and without fail, games like Sorry, games like Candyland, even the game of Life, it always ended with both girls winning. That drove me nuts. When I took that mentality home to teaching my girls, I made it to the point where I didn't try to demolish my kids, right? Because that was the exact opposite effect that I wanted. I would teach them how to play a game, and then that process of learning that game and playing that game was kind of gradual, where I would try to interject strategy, differentiating when and why to do something. It took a long time following the breadcrumbs of this is what you should do, this is what you need to do, to hopefully get them to the point where it was like it made a difference.
I'm glad you brought this up, Sierra. This was a point of contention with my wife and I when I started playing games with my kids. She would always tell me, just why don't you let them win sometimes? I'm not ever going to let my kids win, because I guarantee you when they actually do win, it'll mean something to them. And they'll feel like I finally beat Dad. I won this game. This is a huge accomplishment. And they will feel so proud of themselves for doing it rather than it being handed to them. I'm curious, Sierra, the first time you beat me at a game, how did that feel?
Oh my gosh, I remember it so vividly. I remember we were playing villain version of DC Deck Builder, where we were playing the villains. And it was a one-on-one game with you and me. And that was the first time I remember ever beating you in a game. And I was so excited because I had been playing these games with you for years and years. Now I was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally getting it. I'm understanding how to make up these strategies and that actually work and get me enough points to beat Dad.
And that was in the hospital, if I'm not mistaken, right? You were in the hospital for several days. You may have been bedridden, but your mind was still on top of things, and you were able to pull out a victory for the first time, which was really cool. Probably helped feel a little better, I'm sure, at least mentally, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, so I had this similar conversation with Ashley in a bonus episode that I recorded with her, talking about her Dominion was a game that we kind of was the game similar to DC Deck Builder for you guys, trying to fully understand and grasp that experience from her point of view. And it's very similar to yours, Sierra, where it is one of, not just astonishment, but anxiousness and excitement. Wow, I beat Dad. Our good friend Salvatore proposed a question, follows along the lines of both what the three of us are talking here and and the other episode with Ashley, the how do we teach our kids? We want them to both earn their wins, but we also want them to not feel overwhelmed that it's impossible. They don't want to be crushed all the time because that doesn't have the effect that we're looking for either. It's good to get that experience and that perspective from you, Sierra, to understand how beneficial it has been for you. Thank you for that.
As I've gone through my adult life being a gamer, one of the things that probably stands out the most, besides just the effect it's had on my kids and like the relationship I've built with my kids using that medium of board gaming, is just the relationships that I've built over the years with people that I probably would have never met otherwise, had it not been for Board Game Hobby. All the hug ladies that I'm friends with, Meeple Nation, and a lot of people that I've met over the years and have had a really fun time playing games with that I would never have met, would never have had those relationships, and honestly, I would be lesser for it. The strengthening of relationships, whether it's family and friends, I think is probably the strongest and most beneficial thing that Board Game Hobby brings, at least to my life. And I think to a lot of people, they probably would feel similar.
Yeah, I know. I definitely wouldn't have known so many of the people that I know now. Like, I mean, my best friend, Amberly, Doug's daughter, is my best friend now, and I would never have met had my dad not done the things that he's done and met Doug. I think that's really, really cool that I get to have so many more friends now than I would have had who also have similar experiences to me and also really love this hobby, which I think is really cool.
It reminds me of the story that Andy shared about you when you were in your high school play, Pirates of Penzance, because you weren't in the first act. Backstage, every night during performances, there was a game group backstage when we were greeting you after the show. Here you come with your dad's game backpack full of games that you were playing backstage during the performance, which I thought was great. Those memories are seeds in those other people. They're building on those experiences, and hopefully that's something that they can have later as they can remember, hey, there was this girl in high school. During the play, we were playing games all the time. And so when they get introduced more to the hobby, you could be the catalyst for that introduction for them into the hobby. And that's great. That's awesome that your dad's love for games has trickled on to you, made it part of your life. And as such, you've been spreading that joy to others as well. I think that's great.
Yeah, I always looked forward to find out what game she was playing backstage after the performance. All right, what'd you play tonight?
It's not how did the show go. It was what did you play?
Yep.
Yeah, the number of people that I would have gathered around, because we'd get full player count, and then there'd still be more and more people who would like pop in as they were coming in and out of their scenes and see who was winning and what was going on. It was great.
I'm sure the teachers loved that. Not really, but I'm sure. I'm glad you did it.
It was late enough at night. They wouldn't have been in their classrooms. It was fine.
Well, no, just even I'm talking about like the teachers that are running the performance and this big huge distraction backstage. But yeah, maybe it was great. Maybe it helped keep other kids focused instead of running around and being on their cues. It could have been super beneficial.
I would imagine that most of them probably weren't too big of a let me try that again.
Oh, yeah?
Too big of a distraction, with the exception of I can see Loop and Louie being.
That would have been awesome and very distracting. Loud, too.
Yeah.
That is one that we had going on a lot backstage.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I approve. 2 thumbs up.
All right, this has been really fun discussion to have with you, Sierra, and it's been fun to get your perspective versus ours and see the difference of what it's like to grow up a gamer versus what it's like to grow into being a gamer. Excited for the continual gaming experiences that you get to have in your life as you get married and have your own family. I think it's going to be fun to watch and fun to participate in, and I'm looking forward to it.
You can be the mom I always wanted.
Wow.
No, my mom was great. Appreciate it. But yeah, she never played games.
Well, I'll definitely be playing games with my kids.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, that wraps up our bonus episode. Until next time.
We'll see you at the game table.